So far away, Eric, what is your favourite piece of merch that you own?
Oh, it's got to be my massive 1990 TMNT figures from NECA. The ones that look just like the fucking turtles in the film.
And you know what? Here's a picture. And do you know what mine is? It's very simple. It's just this. It is my sheep. Just my little Mareep. Look at it.
Is that Mareep? Yeah,
Mareep.
that's Mareep.
It's my favourite Pokemon. And just sometimes when I'm streaming, I just like to go. It's perfect. Look at it.
What's the other one you have? It's not Diglett. It's the other one. It's one of the newer ones.
I don't think
the
I
one
own
that
it.
looks slightly phallic that people.
Oh yeah, Wiglet. My Wiglet. Do you know what? I'll get my Wiglet later. But first, let's talk about Carrie Fisher. To many people, Carrie Fisher was Princess Leia, and the character consistently ranks as one of the most famous princesses from fiction who occasionally wields a laser gun. Endlessly featured in merchandising and marketing materials, you'd think that Carrie Fisher would have earned a fortune from likeness rights alone, or at least she would have, if not for the fact she signed away those rights for exactly $0 back in the 1970s. So this is... It's simultaneously a frustrating story, but also it's not as frustrating as it could be because Carrie Fisher didn't give a single solitary fuck. And it's unclear exactly how much money she could have potentially made from the hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of Star Wars media directly featuring her likeness as Princess Leia on them. But I think it's safe to say just the licensing rights from the picture of her in the bikini alone probably could have helped to buy God's second-hand car.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? And how familiar are you with the merchandising of the Star Wars franchise? 'Cause it's a fascinating story.
I'm familiar with some of it, mostly that Lucas leveraged, I think his director's fee, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me on that, for merchandising rights, and it was a huge blow to the studio because they were like, holy shit, he's making money hand over fist.
And the short version of the story is that while George Lucas was making the first Star Wars movie, he wanted more control than the studio would allow. So he made them a few offers that at the time were seen as being pretty beneficial to them. For example, as you mentioned, signing over his director's fee, which was, quite considerable, in return for the sole merchandising rights to the Star Wars brand. And with the gift of hindsight, that seems like a stupid deal, but the context that people often forget when it comes to discussing this is that at the time, in the 1970s, movies didn't really make that much money from merchandising, and they certainly didn't make money from merchandising for 40 years straight. And do you have a favourite piece of Star Wars merchandise? Because, pretty much everything in the franchise has been merchandised in some way.
Star Wars memorabilia is like a no-brainer for me. It's possibly the most popular film series ever. And there's tons of buyers always looking to snap up unusual collectibles. And I gotta say, a Play-Doh Jabba the Hutt set is pretty unusual.
So I don't have anything currently because I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan in the world or anything, but when I was a kid, we had these plastic lightsabers that we would beat the absolute fucking shit out of each other with.
Yes, and I think lightsabers are the popular one, right? Because every time, you see any update about Galaxy's Edge, the way they, get people on board is, we've made new, even better lightsabers, and I still don't understand how, with all of the advances in, toy technology we have, why lightsabers still break when you slap them together. Surely at some point you're going to make one that you can do that with, right? Because that's the first thing any kid's going to do when you hand them a lightsaber.
Right.
And I went to Galaxy's Edge, and every single one says, do not use this in, mock fights or anything like that. It's but that's what it's for!
That's where all the fun is.
Yes. And it baffles me that they still can't do that. And I know the props that they use for lightsabers in the films also couldn't do that. Because all those, behind-the-scenes, interviews, Mark Hamill and the choreographers and stuff, the lightsabers sucked. Every time we tried to hit them together, they'd just snap or break.
The advantage of the vacuum metallizing is that it just scratches rather than creating little chips or, that would go into the actor's eyes.
On camera. That's why, a lot of the choreography in, those early Star Wars movies is just them gingerly tapping the tips together. Because the actors and the choreographers didn't know how hard they could swing them.
gingerly touching our tips.
It's what they do. It's what you see. It's like the difference between the duel between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader and the duel between Anakin and Obi-Wan, like, in canon, like 20, 30 years earlier. Where it's just two old men gently, like, who can't see, keep in mind. Like, the guy playing Darth Vader couldn't fucking see out of that helmet, so it's like, Then you go back to, like, the prequel trilogy, and it's just, which I guess someone's going to mention, Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor did learn to do that in actual speed. When you see that in the film, that's how fast they were actually doing the choreography, because they insisted on doing it all themselves.
Oh, it's not sped up at all?
Not at all, no. People think that it is, and it's not. And there's, like, all the behind-the-scenes stuff of Hayden Christensen and, like, Ewan McGregor training. It's like, oh my god. If this was, like, not made of plastic, they could have probably taken out, like, at least a room full of toddlers.
That's the funny thing. Like, we were discussing trying to figure out if Anakin did anything heroic throughout the entire prequel trilogy, like not counting the Clone Wars series.
Yeah, we mentioned that yesterday on Lucas's stream. So I would like to ask that to the audience at home. So, discounting the Clone Wars TV show, going by the core canon of the 9 movies that are in Star Wars, does Anakin ever do anything heroic? Because the only heroic stuff he does is mention that he did it off screen. And that was in the 3rd movie of the prequel trilogy, where they realised, oh wait, this guy's going to be Darth Vader in half an hour. Okay, make up a bunch of stuff that he does. And I think actually the one heroic thing he does is that he saves a random clone trooper.
I'm going to go help him out.
What? He wants to go back and help out the clone trooper? Oh, right. Anakin is noble. Mm-hmm.
Even though in the Clone Wars movie, he lets an entire, like, ship full of clone troopers explode, and he doesn't even look over his shoulder to see if they're okay, because he doesn't give a fuck.
Pretty much from the start, they've established that the clone troopers are disposable people. Thanks for the ride, idiots!
And they hastily had to put that, I think it's the thing that, like, Red Letter Media points out of. Yeah, they realised, oh, Anakin's turn to the dark side isn't really all that surprising, because he's been an arsehole from second one.
Yeah.
That Anakin Skywalker was supposedly a great and kind, noble Jedi Knight who was tragically seduced by the dark side of the Force and became a Darth Vader.
Vader was seduced by the dark side.
I just said that! Instead, for whatever reason, Anakin is written as a bad apple from the start.
Tell us now!
So is there, like, a single heroic thing, say, for saving that random clone trooper that he does in the movies? I know there's a bunch of stuff that he does in, like, the shows and things, but I'm thinking, like, just in the movies, before the shows existed, does Anakin ever do anything heroic?
Yeah, I don't think you can really call to anything in those movies. Like, pod racing doesn't count.
No, and it's something, it's one of those observations that, when it's pointed out, as I said, like, credit to Red Letter Media for this one, I rewatched the prequel trilogy, I'm like, yeah, Anakin never actually does anything that establishes him as a great hero. The whole thing of him being this great hero fell from grace. He's an arsehole the entire time. Like, he's murdering, like, the Sand People and their children. And I know there's a reason for him to do that, but when he's, like, acting, I didn't know what came over me. It's not what I do. The same thing that's been coming over the entire, like, prequel, like, trilogy so far.
You're sweating. Relax. Take a deep breath.
So it's a thing. It's like...
Yeah, absolutely.
When we were talking about how just, like, Jango Fett is the fucking worst, because the actual series of steps that results in Padme's assassination is actually hilarious if you think about it, where it's Palpatine tells Dooku to kill Padme, and Dooku gets Jango Fett to do it, who outsources it to another assassin, who outsources it to a robot, who outsources it to a bug.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was, like, a commenter in Lucas's stream that said that. And, like... It's just fucking, like, come on. Yeah, George Lucas is such a great writer, right?
He had it all planned out from the beginning, which, I'm being facetious, but one thing he did have planned out, though, was the merchandising rights. And now you think, him owning the merchandising rights to the entire Star Wars brand would have made him a multi-billionaire, and it did, eventually. But just because he owned the merchandising rights doesn't mean he actually had the capability to make merch. So... an aspect of the Star Wars merchandising history that's often overlooked is the role a company called Kenner played in it. And Kenner don't really exist anymore. I think they got bought up by Hasbro or something. But, as mentioned, merch for movies wasn't really a thing. People didn't expect merch for movies to make a lot of money. So as a result, when Lucas was shopping around his, oh, who wants to make toys for this movie I'm directing? Like, what movie? Star Wars. What's that? Like, I think no one expects it to be a big deal. Like, he's a relatively unknown director directing a historically not very popular kind of movie, sci-fi. So basically he was over a barrel when he approached Kenner, and they managed to secure a deal that was incredibly favourable towards them. And for every piece of merch Kenner produced, they would get 95% of all the profits. And the remainder would be split between George Lucas and Fox evenly. So George Lucas, for many years, on every piece of merchandise sold, would split a nickel with Fox. Kenner would take the other 95%.
The original deal was close to a handshake, and it didn't cost us much to get involved with it.
Oh, it was a great deal for Kenner. For every dollar the toys made, Lucas and Fox would split a nickel, and Kenner would get 95 cents.
When you think about that in the context of what has happened with Star Wars, this is an unmatchable deal.
But remember, George didn't have much choice because
every toy company turned us down.
Damn.
And here's like how good the lawyer for Kenner was at the time. He managed to secure this deal in perpetuity throughout the galaxy, which is one of those things that you put into like contracts to make sure people can't wriggle out of it. But the lawyer admits that I put that in as, sort of a joke, because it's a space franchise, but it is a legally binding term. George Lucas wasn't happy.
I put into the draft that Kenner would have the sole and exclusive intergalactic rights. I thought it might bring a smile, but it doesn't seem that anything in the agreement brought a smile to Lucas or Fox.
Kenner had the capability to hold on to those rights in perpetuity, provided they paid George Lucas $10,000 per year, with no ability for George Lucas to renegotiate that fee. So for $10,000 a year, the company would get 95% of the profits from all Star Wars merchandise produced, and they had the exclusive rights to produce any Star Wars merchandise they wanted on any character in the entire series.
Long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, the Star Wars saga began, and Kenner continues the excitement.
Chewbacca's
Marv! It's C-3PO that you can take apart, and other action figures each sold separately.
Take me to Han Solo and Princess Leia. What happened? Han, Leia, sneak attack. I'm all in pieces. What a mess.
Damn.
Which is pretty good, right? And you think,
yeah,
wouldn't you hold on?
Ruthless.
And for $10,000, wouldn't you hold on to those rights forever?
Yeah, probably.
But here's the thing. Kenner, for some reason, decided not to. And for many years, when George Lucas was asked after the original trilogy, you're going to make another one, he'd always say no. He'd say, no, I'm done with Star Wars, I'm going to move on to other projects. And eventually, Kenner kind of realised that, okay, we've made as much Star Wars merchandise as we can. I think when they got bought out by Hasbro, or like something to do with investors, went through their outgoings and went, what are you paying this $10,000 a year for? So, that's to maintain the rights to Star Wars. Like, well, it's a 15-year-old franchise at this point. They're not making any more. It's not worth it. Just let those lapse. And the day that the rights to the merchandising lapsed and they reverted to George Lucas in their entirety, would you believe that he announced the prequel trilogy?
Implications of Kenner, Hasbro not sending the check or not making any toys in a certain year were really huge, because it was shortly after that George announced that he was going to make the prequels.
Yes, I would.
Yeah, he announced the prequel trilogy the day that the rights lapsed and reverted back to him. And then, mysteriously, he announced that he was now going to shop around the merchandising rights to Star Wars, and he managed to argue himself a much better deal that time.
Damn, good on you, George.
Yeah, and what cracks me up about this is when people talk about Disney, I'm like, oh, Disney only wanted to buy Star Wars to merchandise. It's like, what do you think George Lucas did? The day he got the rights back, he announced a new trilogy, quickly farted it out, and the only thing he cared about, like, before he'd even finished writing it, he was already shopping around the merchandising rights, because that's what he cared about.
Deal was signed, we hadn't even read a script. We were going totally on faith that the next movie would be wonderful.
I remember screening the first prequel, and it's the first time that, you really got a feeling of Jar Jar. And I'm like, oh no.
So if anything, Disney's just doing what George Lucas always wanted to do with the franchise. Make just an unfathomable amount of money from it.
Yeah.
And you kind of got to respect it, right?
Fucking Mareep.
The Mareep's coming in, like I said, it's coming in every now and again. And basically just George Lucas was salty that he'd not made even more millions of dollars than he could have done from, like, the franchise that he owns. But in regards to Fisher, like, going back to the 1970s when people didn't think merchandising rights were all that expensive, she just happily signed over her likeness rights in perpetuity to Lucas, and just, and presumably they were owned by Kenner and now Disney, and Carrie Fisher would reportedly just needle George Lucas about that every single time they met, presumably before George Lucas just told her to fuck off.
Well, that's not great.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Carrie Fisher didn't really care about it. Like, she always did it in a joking way. And Carrie Fisher did end up getting her own back on George Lucas in a way. For example, there was a story told of, like, George Lucas really hated the holiday special. And there was a Blu-ray release or something like that of Star Wars that they wanted Carrie Fisher to lend, like, her support to. And Carrie Fisher's like, okay, I'll do it. Give me a copy of the holiday special. And George Lucas like, no one has a copy of the holiday special. Like, Carrie Fisher's like, if you want me to appear in this, like, special and, like, special edition and talk about Star Wars, I want a copy. I know you've got one, George. Give me it. So George Lucas went into the archives and made her a copy, the only copy in existence of the original airing of the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah. Have you seen that, like, all the way through?
It is painful.
It's so painful.
It's so bad. Like, you can see the exact moment Harrison Ford realizes, man, I fucking hate Star Wars.
Come on, I'm just teasing. Well, look, I gotta go. Have a nice life day, but be careful. A lot of troopers in the area.
You can see him on camera just go look around and go, what the fuck am I doing?
A day that takes us through the darkness. A day.
And the reason Carrie Fisher wanted it is because she insisted on having, like, her, in regards to the holiday special, it's interesting in its own right, of the way they got every single principal actor back is not because they signed contracts to say they had to come back. None of them had signed, like, that wasn't really a thing back then. Basically, the people directing it just begged all the people involved, like, please do it. And they offered them whatever they wanted, except for money. And Carrie Fisher went, I'll do it, but I want to sing a song. And you can tell she is coked out of her mind, just singing the worst like song.
We all can share together joyously. A day that takes us through.
And apparently that's what she'd play when she wanted people to leave her house. She'd go and get her copy of the Star Wars Holiday Special, jack up the volume on a sound system, and play that song.
I love Carrie Fisher.
She didn't
you ever
care,
see her
like,
in the Burbs?
I've, like, seen some stuff with her in, but I say I'm mostly familiar with her writing work. So I know, like, she was like a script doctor for a couple of years.
Oh.
Like, she was a script doctor.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, she helped rewrite a lot of the Blues Brothers, and that's why she has a cameo in it.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen the Blues Brothers in a while.
Yeah, she's like the crazy ex-girlfriend. And just that's why you get the shot of Carrie Fisher with a rocket launcher. And she, hey, I'll do this. Like, she did, like, uncredited rewrites on the script. And, like, yeah, I'll do a cameo as well. Why not?
That's good for her.
Yeah, that's the thing. She didn't really care all that much. And when this was brought up to her, like, oh, isn't it true you signed away the likeness rights to you in perpetuity forever for $0? And she was always quick to point out, I'm like, well, yeah, but, context of the time, merchandising rights weren't really a thing. They didn't make that much money, and they certainly didn't make money for, like, half a century. Also, I was 19 when I signed that. Harrison Ford, he was in his 30s, and he still signed it. So if you're calling me an idiot...
What's his excuse?
Yeah, I was a naive teenager in Hollywood. The fuck was his excuse?
I know, right? But, so when the special editions came out, was the Kenner license deal still in effect? Or was... Like, I just want to understand the timeline a little better. So, as far as I know, the new trilogy had not been announced when originally those special editions came out in theaters, which I remember seeing.
Yes, it's the special editions were, like, George Lucas made money from those. That's the thing, like, that's it. resulted in a more interest in Star Wars merch, but Kenner wouldn't get any of the money made by the films. They would make money from the renewed interest in the films of people buying merchandise for them, but the films themselves, like, largely what, like, you know, Lucas made his, like, bread and butter. That's why he did those, because he wanted to make more money. Because, like, if I could just make the same movie again and release it and people will pay money to watch it, hell yeah, let's go. It doesn't matter how inconsequential a change I make, people will pay money to see it.
Yeah, and then, curiously, never re-release the original versions on HD.
It's why the I think it's like the Library of Congress, they wanted the original version of Star Wars, and George Lucas refused to hand it over. And I believe it's not clear, because obviously the terms of the deal are probably never going to be made public, but there's like a long-standing rumor that the reason why Disney hasn't released a demaster of Star Wars is that there was something in the contract they signed with Lucas that said they couldn't. So those original versions do exist. Like, Lucas had the copies, he had the prints. Like, he kept copies of everything, including the holiday special, which he's gone on record as saying if I had, like, you know, time and a hammer, I'd destroy every copy in existence. He still had it, and presumably now Disney has it somewhere in their vaults, but the fact they've not released, you know, any of these earlier versions, or, you know, what a boon for them. If they could now re-release the original versions of the trilogy, but the fact they haven't would suggest that maybe there's something in the contract they signed that would prevent them from doing so, but we can't really say for sure.
Yeah. Like, I think it was last week, I started texting you angrily about how we got to see Return of the Jedi at the Bird Theater here, and I asked the attendant, because she didn't know, you know, she's just working a weekend job, and she's like, I think it's the original 1983 version. I'm like, fuck yeah, sign me up, let's do this. No, it's the latest version with that crappy fucking dance number in the middle of it.
Nice Noodles turns up. That's the thing, we've done a few videos about this in the past, and I think, again, like, it's difficult to talk about, but I do give, like, Lucas some respect for the special editions, because most of the changes are pointless. People always point out, like, a lot of the changes don't really add anything, and in fact, some of them detract from, like, the original film. Like, some of the changes are, like, okay, some of the sound effects weren't, like, synced up properly. Fine, you can do that. You can patch this movie if you want.
I bet you have. My clunky.
And a lot of those changes are pointless, but one that I do appreciate just because of the level of effort that went into it. Because that's the thing, like, George Lucas was a remarkably lazy man when it came to, like, you know, his later career and involvement with Star Wars. Like, there was all those shots of him, like, on the set of the prequel trilogy, explaining what a shot reverse shot is.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Like, the simplest shot in all of filmmaking to get across dialogue, he needs to explain it to someone like it's, like, you know, a new filmmaking technique he's just discovered. And it's just him sat in his director's chair as, like, you know, just dailies get brought over to him. But he went to a weirdly large amount of effort for one scene in that moment where it's like, I forget what the race of alien is. I think it's like a Twi'lek. It's just the hair appendages. Like, I know there's two aliens that have that, and there's Twi'leks and the other one that it probably is what someone's correcting me on. But when, like, that green lady falls into the Rancor hole, and they have a reaction shot of her looking up and spotting the Rancor and screaming, that wasn't lost footage or anything like that they put back in. They got that actress, put her back in the costume, built a set of the Rancor pit, dropped her onto it, and filmed, like, the 4-second reaction shot.
That is impressive.
And one of the things is like the actress, when she came back in, because initially they were talking about, well, we might have to use CGI because it's been, like, you know, 20 years. And the actress turned up and it's like she'd not aged. Like, she put the costume on and she looked like she did in the 80s. And they're like, wait, what? Well, I guess we don't have to fix this with CGI. It's one of the few practical effects they filmed for that special edition because they didn't need to, because the lady just looked exactly the same. But then they put that in the same scene where you have, like, the weird, like singing, like, wolf man, right? Out of CGI that I can see you shaking your head about, and it's like, how do those two things coexist? And the fact as well, if you watch that scene, George Lucas went through that scene to put that back in, but then the CGI is not finished because you see when they have, like, shots where you can see in the background the stage, the CGI characters out there, so he didn't even fix that. But then he built an entire set, brought an actress back out of retirement because she was a dancer or something. She wasn't even an actor professionally. Put her back in the costume, recreated the original set, filmed her on it, and then put her into a scene where the CGI wasn't finished.
Right. So something interesting that I noticed during our viewing of this special edition of Return of the Jedi was that, okay, so all of the kids in the audience love the Ewok shit. They love Ewok stuff. But none of them reacted favorably to that dumbass dance number.
Well, here's the thing.
None of them cared.
Yeah, George Lucas put that in because he thought it'd be funny. Again, there's like behind the scenes stuff where he's talking about it. Of like, well, I think it'd be funny to put this silly dance number into this really tense scene. And no one could tell him no because he was George fucking Lucas. Like, he did it just because he could. He was like a kid being given new toys.
We were doing it, the production was running behind, everybody was racing. We managed to catch a couple of shots of the band, and we put a little bit of music in it, but it was meant originally to be a big musical number, which I thought would be funny in the middle of a Star Wars film.
That was the biggest problem with, like, the prequels, is, like, he was surrounded by yes men. Whereas the original trilogy, he had people like Lawrence Kasdan, like, actually good storytellers, like, hey, you can't, this is not going to be good, we should do it this way instead. Like Harrison Ford, I think you've mentioned, has said, you know, you could write this stuff, but you can't get people to fucking say it.
Yeah, and he said it to George Lucas, to his face, in front of fans, because he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah. I love Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the ending? Did you feel good about the ending? Do you like the way his story ended up? Did you see that as Han's ending?
And it's like, you know,
he's
Star
got
Wars.
such grumpy old man energy,
It's
even
great,
when he was
right?
like in his 30s.
And like Star Wars was like famously saved in the edit as well. Of like the initial cut of the film, everyone was like, God, this is awful. And it was saved in the edit by, I believe, George Lucas's wife at the time. And the prequel trilogy, again, you know, not great, but the one commendation I'll give it is that it arguably might be the most successful indie movie ever made. Because it was like written, directed, and like edited by like one guy, and George Lucas's own company, like ILM, because he owned ILM. Because I think that's the reason really Disney wanted Lucasfilm and wanted ILM as well. Like they did all the effects for it, so it's arguable that it's an independent movie. Like, it could be made. Some will say it wouldn't, but I just like the idea that technically you could, if you really, really want to stretch the definition of what an indie movie is, you could count the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, I remember there was this quote that was floating around from like the behind the scenes footage of him talking about Jar Jar Binks, and he's like, "Well, this is a funnier character than we've ever had before, and I think the kids are really gonna like him."
Yeah, it's like Jar Jar's the key to all of this. And what he meant is he's the key to making me a shit ton of money in merchandising, because he saw him as like, you know, this is the character all the kids are gonna like.
I don't think any of the kids liked Jar Jar, though.
I don't mind the antics. I remember like watching the film when I was like 8 and thinking Jar Jar was funny, which I guess, like, you know, I was the primary audience for it, and I did remember getting, like, you know, some merch with Jar Jar on it, but it's mostly the Clone Troopers I thought was cool. Do you think? Like General Grievous as well? I remember like thinking General Grievous was really cool. And then the fact he's not in a lot of the movie, it's mostly like extra universe material where General Grievous actually gets to shine, but he was a really cool design. The idea he's got 4 fucking lightsabers, let's go.
Right. And people, because I'm a few years older, so when those came out, I think I was in like 6th grade or something. So I was like not mature, you know, but maybe those fucking Reap.
He's just great. Obviously, you've got 2 cameras, like, and this is one for Eric and this is one for recording. So you just see it come into frame, but for the people watching at home, they just see Mareep slowly just rise into frame, just peering ever so checked. If I was going to do that to you, it'd be from like this angle, so that's what people at home are seeing. Which is just really funny, so just like, keep people's attention, and just like, whoop. Still talking about Star Wars? Okay, I'm going to go. Just going to peace out.
Karl knows that I have extreme ADHD, so he'll just distract me with shit.
Yes.
On the screen.
With a cuddly toy, just like George Lucas did with Jar Jar Binks. Like, don't you want to play with Jar Jar Binks?
There we go. I mean, one thing that is definitely unfortunate about that whole debacle with Jar Jar is like how much the fans just like harassed Ahmed Best. And, like, he's a great actor, too, which really sucks.
It's not his fault. It's the way he was directed to say it. It's like Hayden Christensen. His career was basically killed by Star Wars. Everyone just assumed he was a shit actor, myself included. And it was only years later when it emerged that, like, George Lucas insisted that he read the lines the way that he does in the film. Of like, Jedi don't show emotion. Stop emoting. It's like...
And then when I opened it and found it was science fiction, I thought, oh, crumbs, this is simply not for me. And then I started reading, and it seemed to me the dialogue was pretty ropey.
I'm still angry about the way they treated Jake Lloyd. He was only 10 years old, that boy, and he did exactly what George wanted him to do. Believe me, I understand clunky dialogue.
I said to George, you can type this stuff, but you can't say it.
But I'm supposed to be like, breaking away from the Jedi Order? Can't I emote a little bit? This, Padme's really hot. No, stop emoting. And it sucks. It's like, you feel bad for the guy, right?
Yeah.
What am I doing? And the bad part is saying, I'm doing this for Padme, I'm doing this for us, and it'll be better for the universe, it'll be better for everybody. But there's always this little part in you is saying, what am I doing?
It's kind of similar to, like, Robert Pattinson in the Twilight movies. Like, he's a great fucking dramatic actor. You look at The Lighthouse, like, holy shit. He makes a great Batman, too. But, like, you got all these people, like, fucking whinging and whining about it because they haven't seen his other work. And, like, part of you can't blame him because he's mostly been doing indie films to repair that reputation.
Yeah, it's reminds me, though, of, like, when he got cast as Batman. He was the director of Batman when someone just straight up asked him, like, well, you cast the guy from Twilight as Batman? Well, people said the same thing about Heath Ledger when he was cast as the Joker. Yeah. They say he was like, he's only in the gay cowboy movie, which, that's a fantastic movie where he's displays incredible acting range. But all you're admitting when you say that is that you've only seen one movie star, Robert Pattinson, and you expect me to make that my problem? How is it my problem you've seen one movie with Robert Pattinson in it? I've seen many movies with Robert Pattinson. He's a fantastic actor. That's why I cast him. Just because you've only watched one movie doesn't mean I have.
And I rewatched The Batman last night because Penguin just came out. And, Pattinson gives a really interesting performance because he's very methodical in the way he moves, and he's also very socially awkward even in the suit.
Which makes a lot of sense, right? Of like,
yeah, it does.
Just displaying one, Batman doesn't really interact with people, but also like the trauma. That guy lost his parents and was sent to a private boarding school. Of course, he's going to be like socially repressed.
Fucking got therapy.
And bringing it back to Star Wars and Ahmed Best, I remember when he had a cameo in one of the Star Wars shows, The Jedi, and online the discussion was like, Ahmed Best had a chance to redeem himself. Finally, all those people who harassed him all those years ago know that he's a good actor and now he has a good role in Star Wars. And it's like, I remember thinking that, like, these are the same people who would have been harassing him 2 decades ago. Absolutely 100%, because they're doing it to the other actors in the show. In the same breath, they're commending Ahmed Best for, redeeming himself as Star Wars and lamenting the fact that Star Wars fans back then just didn't realise how good an actor he was. As shitting on, like, Daisy Ridley. And Kelly Marie Tran.
Listen.
Like, they're doing the exact same thing, but they're 10, 15, 20 years removed from the prequel trilogy. Now they've got nostalgia for it. And in 10, 20 years' time...
no self-awareness for this shit.
None whatsoever, no. And that's like, I remember that being really frustrating. It's like, you'd have been doing it 20 years ago. Like, if the prequels were released now, they would have the same vitriolic reaction that the new movies have had. And in 20 years' time, I bet people... It's already started. I already see it every now and again of like, were we too harsh on The Force Awakens? It was actually a really good movie, because every time they release a new thing, now it's like, they have nostalgia for the old thing. Because like time tempers. And
you're even kind of seeing it with like Alien Romulus, sort of pseudo redeeming Prometheus and Covenant, which is just not fucking possible. Those are awful fucking movies.
Alien Romulus was great,
but people are just like, hey, I don't mind the references to Prometheus and shit. I'm like, fuck you.
So time tempers things, and it says people now have nostalgia for the prequel trilogy, and I guarantee in 5-10 years' time, people saying the same thing. There will be like, the same people who were saying that about Ahmed Best. They'll be like, Daisy Ridley will have a cameo in 5-10 years in a Star Wars project. People are like, man, Daisy Ridley can really act. It's like, she's always been able to act. She always could.
Yeah. That's why they cast her.
It's just, Yeah, you're not being told by someone on YouTube to hate her. Because it's always that, right?
Right, and there was nothing wrong with Daisy Ridley's performance in those films. It was the script and the direction they decided to take with her, because they really gave her, like, milquetoast option A and milquetoast option B.
Yeah, it's the same thing with, like, Hayden Christensen. Of, like, people going back, like, yeah, Hayden Christensen was done dirty by the prequel trilogy. And then not applying that same logic to, like, Daisy Ridley or Kelly Marie Tran or John Boyega or anything like that. Of, like, they were also done dirty by just, this is not a universe that has a lot of depth to it. It has a lot of, like, it's not the best written universe, and actors do the best with the material that they're given.
Coming upon the exploded planet of the princess, Alderaan, and it's totally been blown away. And Harrison says, look, kid, I've done my part of the bargain. When I get to an asteroid, you, the old man, and the droids get dropped off. And my line was, but we can't turn back. Fear is their greatest defense. I doubt if the actual security there is any greater than it was on Aquilai or Soest. And what there is most likely directed towards a large-scale assault. And I thought, who talks like this, George? I mean, this is really not fair because, you know, we're the ones that are going to get vegetables thrown at us, not you.
And my wife and I were talking about this after we left the theater at the Bird Theater, which is a fantastic fucking theater. Fucking Mareep. And she was talking about that shot at the end where Hayden Christensen replaces the original actor that played Darth Vader.
I love that so much. Why didn't Yoda get younger?
I know, right?
Why did Obi-Wan Kenobi get younger? I guess they say so. That's the moment he was. That's the last moment he was Anakin, right? That's the excuse that George Lucas. He was Anakin. That was the last moment he was Anakin. Because after that, he was Darth Vader. It's like he was still Anakin when he like turned back to the light.
Was that before or after he slaughtered the children?
I don't know. It's not the best written movie.
No.
It's like you think, and I like that change just because of how emblematic it is of the fact that George Lucas couldn't leave well enough alone. So
yeah, right.
Fully 100% just have an ironic enjoyment of Star Wars now, and I think I want to end on this. I recommend if anyone wants to go back and rewatch the prequels, one, don't. They're 2 hours long and they suck. They're really boring. But what you should do is go back and go onto Disney Plus, because on Disney Plus they have all of the previs work for the fight scenes. And do you like the fight scene between like the Emperor and Yoda, where Yoda just does like 14,000 backflips? They have the previs for that, where they have like the CGI model of Yoda, but they don't animate it. But they still have all the voice lines, and I contend that is the best version of that fight scene, because it's just the bad CGI Yoda. It looks like a shitpost, but it's real. And you just have the bad CGI Yoda jumping across the screen. And I'm like, this is what Star Wars should be. This is what the new movie should have in them. This level of camp. Let's go.
Just fucking lean into it. I mean, Star Wars was always campy.
Oh, always, yeah. One of the things that always cracks me up is when they try and make it serious.
Yeah.
Like one of my, like, just ironically favourite things about Star Wars is every time they try and soften the image of Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker, all it does is just make it more hilarious that, so they gave him 7 entire seasons of backstory in the Clone Wars TV show, and it's like, wow, okay. All that does is make his 40-minute turn to the dark side where he immediately decides to kill children even worse. The more...
Yes.
It's like try to paint over something, but the more you paint over it, the more mistake you make. I mean, oh, fuck, now I've got to fix that bit. Oh, bollocks, that's changed that bit. Like, do you like moving an image in Word? Then your entire timeline gets fucked up. And you try and fix it and it messes up more stuff. That's what Star Wars is, and it's great. Like when you accidentally move, like when you're editing a video and you move it to the side a bit, and like, you didn't realize it was still grouped up with all the audio below, and it shifts everything across one big. Oh god, no!
My editor has done that before, and I've had to go in and correct that stuff.
Yeah, it's not great. You know, speaking of editing, Eric, what do you do when you're not talking about Carrie Fisher Star Wars?
Well, I am an author of cosmic horror, dark fantasy, and my bad.
Why you tell people this? I'll go get Wiglet. You tell people, I'll go grab Wiglet.
Do it.
I'll go grab Wiglet. Wait a minute.
Mareep.
There we go.
Yay.
Keep an eye on chat. I mean, you could have been telling people the entire time about what you do, Eric. So tell me about it.
Oh, shit. Okay.
You were gazing into the eyes of the sheep.
Yeah.
Makes you very sleepy.
I was just like doing very deep renditions of Fact Fiend's true mascot, Mareep.
No, this is the true mascot, Wiglet. This is a real Pokemon. If anyone out there's not played Pokemon in a while, this is a real Pokemon. It's called Wiglet. It was absolute.
Yeah.
I don't know why people laugh at this so much. It's the Pokemon.
Carl.
It's not even funny coming in from off frame, right?
So many people drop comments on top 10s asking if that was just a dildo.
Man, I had that. You see, top 10s, that's something you work on, right, Eric? Come on. Promote your stuff as just Wiglet goes in for his cameo.
All right. Let me actually. He's
great, right? 10.25 inches of Wiglet, never before seen. Let's go.
All right. So I host Biographics and Geographics right now. Top 10s is hosted by Karl, but I am also the production manager. I make the stuff go, but I am building a storytelling deep dive channel and video essay channel called Storyrant. I'm also an author of cosmic horror, dark fantasy, and cyberpunk. Sometimes I mix all of those things into one just clusterfuck of genres because I have ADHD. And yeah, you should check that out. I have an hour-long video essay on Alien, and I have 2 more video essays on Alien coming out. God damn it, Carl.
It's a good franchise to make video essays about, and that's the thing. Like, you mentioned that I'm occasionally guest hosting over on Top 10s. So if you support this channel, you like this channel, you want to see something that's a bit more professional, a bit more structured, a bit more scripted, you can go see either myself or Eric presenting videos over on Geographics, Biographics, and Top 10s. If you want to see Eric just get really angry about Alien, you can go to Storyrant. And if you want to see more work from me, I have plenty of work all over the internet at the moment. Wiki Weekends. I occasionally... Do I get credited for, I sometimes, edit scripts for Geographics and Biographics? Yeah. Not all of them, but some of them.
I told the team to do it.
Yeah. Like, some of them, it's like, just, hey, Carl, make this funny again. I'm like, okay, I'll make this funny. I'll put a few jokes in, just a couple.
Yeah, and sometimes he derails recording because I'll read a joke that just fucking ruins me.
Joe, why? Because that's what you need. People like personality in their content creators. I hope.
Yeah.
It's great. So it's really funny as well because when people come around, like my dad saw it and he was like, "What's that?" And it's like, "It's a Pokemon." And he just looked and went, "Okay." And just left. He was not having it. Because like you said, it's in the background of videos sometimes. I'm going to share this story because I want to put the clip in because it's fucking hilarious.
Okay, cool.
I watch a lot of bad reality TV. Mm-hmm. And a bad reality TV show I was watching in the background was this show called Spendaholics, where they go to someone's house who's really in debt and stop spending money, you fucking idiot. And one of the videos, clearly the lass who they're going to the house of to they just snoop around your house and you left some bills out conveniently, let's see how much debt you're in. Clearly the lass didn't realise that they could be going into her bedroom and they never comment on it, but you can see it and it's in the background of the shots. And the camera guy seemed to have spotted it because he pans over and zooms in just a little bit before they cut away abruptly. And it's just the lass on her bed just has 2 sets of handcuffs, just on her headboard. And it's like, oh no, that's just on TV forever now.
There we go. Harvey Nichols, House of Fraser, Net-a-Porter.
Yeah.
Internet shopping.
We know what she was getting up to.
I don't know what assumptions they'll make about me. They've never met me, and then they'll be going through all my things. I'm quite nervous, actually, about it. It's a bit funny, really, someone going through your stuff.
And they never commented, but I noticed it in the background of a shot, and I was like... It's like all those, you see those screenshots go around, people on the news, right? They were on the news, and there's that lady who was on the news and accidentally left a dildo on a shelf.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what people think with Wiglet. It's it's a Pokemon. Why have people got such a dirty mind? There's nothing rude about this whatsoever.
Nothing phallic. Nothing at all.
There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's Pokemon. It's innocent.
Yes.
So that's what you need in the background of your Alien videos. When you're talking about the phallic sexual imagery of Alien, just put this in the background and never explain it.
Yeah, I don't have any Alien merch yet. That's what I need. Are we done? Or
no? If you want to, I'll stop the camera now. There we go.
Trio. 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 Trio.